The 2026 NFL Draft has officially concluded, and the Jacksonville Jaguars ended up making 10 total draft selections. We're going to be breaking down every single one of them, giving draft grades, and then just overall team grade for the Jacksonville Jaguars in total. This is Jags Now, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. I'm your host, Cullen Brown. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this entire draft class here in just a moment, but my guy Billy Beebe, he runs our Colts Talk channel. He's been talking a lot of smack. He's in the office this week for the NFL Draft here at our Dallas location, and he very much reminded me that the Colts Talk has picked up more new subs during the month of April than Jags Now. We kind of help me out a little bit here. It's free. You can always unsubscribe if you want to have the coverage around the Jacksonville Jaguars all year long. News, rumors during the draft, during free agency, during the actual season. We've got you covered, and hey, I'll make you a deal. Hit that subscribe button. Like I said, it's completely free. If you don't like what we're doing here and you want us to unsubscribe in a week, by all means, it doesn't cost you anything. Just make that promise to me. If you enjoy what we're doing here, hit that sub button, and it would be greatly appreciated. All right, let's get into these selections for the Jacksonville Jaguars during the NFL Draft. We're just kind of run through these and then go through the grades. They started off on day 2 in round number 2, picking Nate Boerkircher, the tight end out of Texas A&M. They take his teammate, Albert Regis, the defensive tackle, there to begin the third round at pick 81. Emmanuel Pregnon, the uber-talented offensive lineman out of Oregon. Jalen Huskey, the versatile defensive back out of the University of Maryland. Going into day 3, you grab Wesley Williams, the edge out of Duke. Tanner Koziol, the tight end out of Houston. Josh Cameron, the wide receiver out of Baylor. C.J. Williams, also another wide receiver out of Stanford. And then your 2 7th-round picks, Zach Durfee and Parker Hughes out of Middle Tennessee State, the linebacker. So we're going to break down every single pick, my thoughts, my grades here on today's episode. Let's start with the day 2 picks, who I already gave grades for these guys, but just to kind of retouch and re-highlight them here in today's video. I did change 2 grades from this list yesterday, starting with Nate Boerkircher. Originally had him at a B-, have him at a C+. He is an older prospect, and while I respect Gladstone and Cohen saying they want more toughness, they want a guy that kind of fits their vision in terms of having more dual tight end sets. Boerkircher, I like the prospect. I don't love him in the range. He was kind of a guy that I thought was better fit as a day 3 guy, but they ultimately grabbed him in round 2. I bumped him down to a C+. Still think he can be a productive player for the Jaguars, though. Albert Regis, sticking at B+. Think he's somebody that's going to be really great on the Jaguars defensive line. He's a young talent, will give you energy, high motor. I think it was a good pick. Emmanuel Pregnon, getting him in the 3rd round, absolute steal. Really don't even need to break this one down much further other than the fact that it is still an A, and there is a world where he could be your starting left guard for 2026. He gets an A grade. I did bump up Jalen Huskey to a B-. Eric Murray's on an expiring contract, and while I am curious to see what they do with Caleb Ransaw, the former 3rd-round pick out of, I believe it was Tulane, the Jaguars, they're going to get creative in the secondary. Maybe not have a role in 2026 for Huskey, but look, 2027 beyond, he could be somebody that the Jaguars implement alongside Antonio Johnson, potentially. Getting into the day 3 picks, the ones that actually happened today. We'll start off with Wesley Williams, edge out of Duke. We're going to be bringing you guys my thoughts, my grade on Wesley Williams and the entire day 3 and the rest of the Jaguars draft class here in just a moment, but I couldn't do this show if it wasn't for our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. The playoffs are here for basketball. Baseball is underway, and it's time to cash in with Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app and is the best place to win cash while watching sports. If you're a hoops guy, you can go with points, rebounds, assists, blocks, or 3-pointers. And if you're more of a seam head, you can choose stats such as hits, home runs, or strikeouts. You guys can also follow me on the app along with producer Reed. My @ is @CullenBro21 if you want to fade or ride with my picks. And if you guys are more of a football head like me, I've got some season-long football projections that I absolutely love for this year. I'm rolling with Trevor Lawrence. More on his passing yards. He's hit 4,000 passing yards multiple times during his career. Give me the more on his passing yards for this upcoming season. And then Tedero McMillan, more on his receiving touchdowns. I think he is a star in the making for the Carolina Panthers. $20 lineup to win $60 here. New user offer, guys. Download the Prize Picks app today with the link in the comments and description and use code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Getting into my grade for Wesley Williams, got to give it a B+. I think this is proper value for Wesley Williams. I think he's a guy that the Jaguars, when we were talking about positions that they needed to add during the 2026 NFL draft, I looked at Wesley Williams and I said, okay, or I looked at edge as a potential position behind Trayvon Walker, behind Josh Hines-Allen. I like Danny Strigo, but I wanted someone to have a running mate with him in terms of, depth at that edge position. And Wesley Williams, I think, is a really interesting prospect. Now, the Jaguars did have to move up to get him. They traded 119, or they received 119 and pick number 196 overall, a 6th-round pick from the Carolina Panthers in exchange for 124 and 166. So basically, you move up 5 spots, and then you move back 30 spots later in day 3. I didn't necessarily mind the value, especially if you like your guy in Wesley Williams here, who, again, 22 years old, from Gainesville, Virginia, 256 pounds, 6'3". You see the stats on the screen: 44 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, only 2 sacks, which I know some people are going to kind of harp on that, although sacks can be misleading. But 46 pressures in the ACC is something that I am a fan of. Pressures, sacks, they all kind of combine together. And I think when you have that level of production, sometimes you can kind of get unlucky in terms of getting home. And I think Wesley Williams, with the proper development, can be a really effective pass rusher at the next level. Our own Tom Downey had a scouting report on him, had him as the 25th best edge in the class, 176th overall. He's an active run defender with physical hands, a great motor, comes with great reviews on his leadership and work ethic, lacks ideal length and fluidity to shed blocks, but again, I love hearing that active run defender, physical hands, great motor, all things that if you're looking to add somebody to the Jaguars offensive line depth chart, I think it's great because now you're probably going to slot him behind Trayvon Walker as your kind of, backup edge to him with Josh Hines-Allen and Danny Strigo rocking on the other side. And that makes your depth, in my opinion, that much better. So I'm a big fan of this move. Dane Brugler was very high on Wesley Williams in terms of, day 3 prospects, saying this, quote, Williams is unselfish, energetic edge defender who plays with quickness and a nose for the football. He projects as a rotational base who can reduce in sub packages. So fan of this move. I'm a fan of this pick. They needed to add an edge. They added one at the top of day 3. Wesley Williams, your Jacksonville Jaguar. Moving on now to the second day 3 pick, Tanner Koziol, the tight end out of Houston. You already drafted Nate Boerkircher in the 2nd round. And actually, ironically enough, I actually like Koziol more than Boerkircher in the 2nd. So Koziol to me is more of a vertical threat tight end that I think would benefit next to Brenton Strange, who's kind of your do-it-all guy. And I think in cohesion, right, Boerkircher will be your blocking tight end. Koziol will be your field stretcher. Strange is your do-it-all tight end. Here's a scouting report from our own Tom Downey on Koziol. Great length and uses it well to thrive in contested catches. Might be a bigger slot tight end given his frame. Struggles to separate and force missed tackles after the catch. But again, if you're able to kind of, have thrive in contested catch areas, that's something that Trevor Lawrence could use on any given passing downs. And clearly Liam Cohen and the rest of the NFL, you saw it during the NFL draft. I mean, producer Reed, how many tight ends it felt like were drafted day 2 into day 3? Like, it was an absurd amount. One of the most I've ever seen. And for Koziol, who you see the production on your screen, 74 receptions, 727 yards, 10 yards per catch. This guy is going to be a difference maker for you. And I just love the value more in the 5th round. So, when you're 6'6", 247, you're a big freaking target that I think this offense can thrive with. And I love the value. I love the kind of versatility that it presents Liam Cohen with. We kind of explored that possibility. Could the Jaguars look to, add more 2 tight end, 3 tight end sets? Well, they definitely have the bodies to do it. Producer Reed, is there any chance you can pull up the tight end depth chart? Because I think Koziol will probably slide in as your tight end 3 behind both Boerkircher and obviously Brenton Strange. He'll compete with Quentin Morris also for snaps as well. Hunter Long, I'll be honest, future doesn't look great. Herbert, you're probably going to be practice squad member, Patrick Herbert, that is. But Quentin Morris, I could see the Jaguars keeping 4 tight ends on this roster with Brenton Strange, Nate Boerkircher, Quentin Morris, and obviously now Tanner Koziol. So this depth chart, I think, is going to change, obviously. I'm going to add these picks in here afterwards. But Tanner Koziol, I'm a fan of this draft selection here by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Moving in to another draft selection here in the 6th round. He actually went up and got this guy who, I'm not going to lie, this is one of the more jack of all trades, just do it all players. Really unique wide receiver Josh Cameron out of the University of Baylor that you got at pick 191 overall. Like I said, you traded up with the New England Patriots to go and select him. And I do love doing research on draft prospects to find some of these cooler stories on Cameron. He was a guy that really thrived during the Senior Bowl, and I think he's somebody that, with his skill set, it's not going to be necessarily a burner, not going to be somebody that takes the top off the defense, but he's really good in terms of yards after catch. As we can show the trade here for you, 6th round pick, 191 to select Cameron. You give up 196, and then a future a 7th round pick at number 245 overall. But so Josh Cameron, good value, day 3. I think B is a proper grade for him. He's not going to be somebody, like I said, that the Jaguars are going to look at as a burner by any means. He's 6'1", 220 pounds. He's actually pretty stocky for a wide receiver. You see the stats on your screen: 69 receptions, 872 yards, 9 touchdowns on the year. He's going to be a bowling ball. Like, when he's in the open field, not a lot of guys are wanting to tackle him, especially defensive backs. And you needed to add wide receivers behind your kind of top 3 there with Parker Washington, Brian Thomas Jr., Jakobi Meyers, and then obviously Travis Hunter and situational reps. So you add a couple of receivers here, first one being Josh Cameron. Like I said, he doesn't have the athletic profile that you're necessarily looking for, but does add some punt return value. I don't know if necessarily they'll put Cameron back there, but very good red zone profile. Won a lot of contested throws, a lot of 50-50 balls during the Senior Bowl and at Baylor, so I'm a really big fan of his. Dane Brugler had this to say when it came to Josh Cameron. Cameron plays well through contact and his functional strength and ball-winning size, but his struggle in separating and avoiding contested windows will be a limiting factor. Though he has the traits and intrigue, NFL teams' development time is needed. And like I mentioned, he's going to compete for a roster spot, but wouldn't shock me if he's this team's effective wide receiver 4. Obviously, Travis Hunter, when they're going to use him, he's kind of more of a situational guy, but he could be this team's first wide receiver off the bench if you want to kind of run that route. So Josh Cameron, a guy who, I'll be completely honest, I think he's going to have a really interesting fit. I think Liam Cohen will have the opportunity to get creative with him, get him some kind of easy touches and see what he can do after the catch. But he is one of my kind of more favorite picks on day 3. Now this one, CJ Williams. We do this thing at Chat Sports where, again, we try to give you guys the best draft coverage here on the channel. CJ Williams is not somebody that we had personally highly ranked here at Chat Sports. And again, I'm not doubting Liam Cohen scouting. Clearly, they have more access to information than we do here. I'm just going to give this one a C-. I know that you had to add another receiver, and I don't necessarily hate it in the 7th round in terms of, I'm not going to give this a failing grade by any means, but I felt like there's some other receivers on the board that you could have potentially gone with. He's 6'1", 203 pounds, out of California. He's a senior, 59 receptions. You see there on your screen. Just somebody that, we don't even have stuff in our database, for crying out loud, in terms of just information on him. He's a guy that competes for a camp body spot. I'm not sure. Ran a 4.53 40-yard dash, had an arm length of about 31 inches, 77-inch wingspan. Had a decent shuttle at 4.47, good 10-yard split at a 1.58. Just not somebody that I'm super familiar with. Again, I try to do as much research as I can in terms of researching this guy. He did lead Stanford, had career highs last season, so something to kind of maybe build on, but not necessarily the most well-known athlete out here. So I'll trust Gladstone in the fact that, okay, you're taking a shot on day 3. I'm not going to kill you for it. I just can't really defend the pick either if I don't have a lot to work with. So I'm going to give it a C-. Zach Durfee, another edge rusher out of Washington. Again, don't really mind this pick. I think the Jaguars needed to add potentially 1 or 2 edge rushers, and they go again here in the 7th round after adding Wesley Williams there in the 4th. I'm going to give this one a C+. Again, 7th round guy, not really highly well known there out of Washington, but can compete probably with Danny Strigo for, some snaps, maybe even a roster spot there. But did have 4 sacks last year on 35 pressures. Again, 6'4", 247 pounds, 37 tackles for loss. We can show this quote here from Dane Brugler if we could. Durfee struggles to play through contact and is undeveloped shed skill versus both the run and pass, but his athletic twitch and energetic play style rightfully have NFL teams interested. So love to hear that the twitch. You always love to see twitchy edge rushers. And again, 7th round pick, not somebody that you're going to have major investment capital on or somebody that you're banking on necessarily, but 4 sacks, you can appreciate it. Did play, obviously, in the Big Ten at Washington. So, again, not necessarily mad. And like I mentioned, he'll probably compete with Danny Strigo there in kind of the depths in the end for a roster spot. Maybe can contribute on special teams. So I gave Zach Durfee a C+. Next up, another name that, not going to lie, didn't have a lot of information on this guy. Parker Hughes, linebacker out of Middle Tennessee State. They finally go linebacker, and it's a dude that I had little to no knowledge on. I'm giving a C- grade, just being, completely transparent there with you guys. 6 foot, 228 pounds, so he's a smaller linebacker out of Middle Tennessee State. You see 100 tackles, which is really impressive. 4 pass breakups, 2 interceptions as well. So, again, not something that, is going to blow off the page in terms of the results or whatever. Here, I'm just going to literally pull up some stats here on the fly here as we're kind of running through this. Was a senior, was a 7th-round pick at 240. Just somebody that I think will compete in the Jaguars. I think what this mainly said about the linebacker position is that they're comfortable with Ventrell Miller being your team's starting will linebacker opposite of Foye Oluokun. Then Skardek's obviously going to be somebody that you rely on as your Sam, kind of more of your blitzing run linebacker. Jack Kaiser, you can see maybe gets some run as well. So former guy out of Notre Dame. But, yeah, another 7th-round pick in Parker Hughes. Not going to try to BS you guys. Didn't have the most knowledge and information in terms of this pick, but I think he could be, it's 7th-round guys. You're taking shots in the dark, so we'll look to try to get some more kind of analysis for you guys. But I want you guys to get down below in the comment section. I'm about to give my team grade for the Jacksonville Jaguars draft class, but what grade would you give it? A, B, C, D, or F? Prove you know ball down in the comment section. If I personally had to give a grade, I'll be honest. This was kind of a mixed bag, if it were. I'm going to give it a B- for the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2026. A lot of guys and a lot of value. When I initially, was going through day 2 and, talking with some of the guys here at the Chat Sports office, I wasn't necessarily sure how I would grade this, but, seeing how the rest of the board went and seeing the rest of the NFL draft, kind of how it fell where it may, like I mentioned earlier, consensus was completely thrown out the window. And the Jaguars clearly were prioritizing, athletic traits. They were prioritizing guys that they think could be value in terms of, leaders in the locker room. And they wanted to get faster, more physical. And it's kind of hard to rip them because in their first year together, Gladstone and Cohen won 13 games, won the AFC South, and are somebody they're on a high right now. So you can't really question necessarily their thought process. I've seen a lot of, draft grades in terms of, other draft analysts giving the Jaguars kind of low grades in terms of what the heck are they doing. Just saying, going through the draft class again, I understand that some people thought there were some reaches here, some players that maybe necessarily didn't fit, the value in terms of where they were drafted. But I'm fairly confident in this group in terms of they made the right decision. They made the right choices in terms of what they think they need to compete, not only for the AFC South, not only to win games in the National Football League, but potentially make a Super Bowl push for Super Bowl 61. So I'll give it a B-. I have a lot of faith in Cohen and Gladstone, but you guys let me know down below in the comment section. And that'll conclude today's video of Jags Now. Again, help us beat Colts Talk here at Chat Sports. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoy what we do here. And until next time, guys, peace out.